this tutorial, we're going to be focusing on patterns or dress patterns, which in textiles is another name for a template. You would need to either make or use an existing pattern for all of your textiles projects. Creating clothes patterns from scratch, for example, is very difficult and often require a great amount of skill to do so. People who make their own clothes often buy what's known as a commercial pattern, which is a ready-made pattern and will normally include instructions of how to make the garment. I have the zip here that I'm going to use for my zipped pouch, and I'm going to measure the usable part of it from start to finish using the ruler. In this case, it measures about 22 centimetres long. This is going to be the length of my zipped pouch, prescribed by the length of my zip. I can choose any depth I wish for my bag, depending on how much fabric I have, and have opted for quite a deep bag of around 16 centimetres. I'm going to start by drawing out my rectangular shape on the paper, 22 by 16 centimetres. I will need to ensure that it's a true rectangle, and we'll use a set square to make sure each has a 90-degree angle. When we were creating our seam samples, learning how to join two pieces of fabric together, you will have noticed that you lose an amount of fabric on the width within the seam itself. Therefore, when creating a pattern or template, we will need to add on a certain amount to compensate for this. This extra amount is known as the seam allowance. This is why it's important when sewing your seams to use the guidelines on your sewing machine to ensure that all your seams are the same. This measurement used is normally 1.5 centimetres. Therefore, I'm going to add a seam allowance of 1.5 centimetres around each side of the pattern. The zipped pouch that we are going to make will have a front and a back, so we will need to cut out two pieces of fabric. As well as this, our zipped bag is going to be lined. Therefore, we will need to cut another two pieces of fabric out, the exact same shape. You may choose to have the lining in another fabric. It is always helpful to note all important information on the pattern, such as the number of pieces required and also the seam allowance given. Patterns contain lots of symbols which give you information. For example, a solid drawn line means your cutting line, and a dotted line represents where your stitched line will eventually be. Finally, I'm just going to cut out my pattern and then it is ready to be used.